Hello everybody, welcome to the shop. On the operating table today I've got the governor controlled gas and air intake valve, I don't know how to be more concise about that name, off of the Bessemer 30 horsepower model FC. I had to take this off in order to take off the intake, which had a broken valve keeper. A little side note here, here's the keeper, see the old weld has not held on too well. That'll be a separate video. Anyway, this flange here bolts onto the intake valve chest, and on the bottom here you see those studs. That's where this intake mounts onto, to give you some frame of reference. Also, this is just a support brace for the exhaust pipe. So, oh, and lastly, the governor fork comes in here and pulls this rod up and down, and that's what controls the fuel and airflow. And it's stuck, doesn't move, so we're going to take this all apart and see how it works inside and loosen it up, free it up, and get it functional again. And one last thing, the gas comes in through here on the underside of this housing. You see there's this little washer here, spring-loaded. This is the safety shutoff. Right now it's in the open position, and on the engine the arm with the governor belt idler tensioner wheel, that arm would be under here, and if the governor belt were to break, that arm would pivot upwards like this, and it would push this up and it would close off the gas supply. So that's a fail-safe. In the event that the governor belt breaks, it'll shut off the gas and shut off the engine, rather than rendering the governor inoperable and potentially overspeeding the engine. Well, we got it apart, so let's see what's inside. Now, I couldn't take this bottom piece off. There is a gasket there and a bottom piece to come out, but it's not coming out easily, and I believe this whole bottom part here is part of it. There's I can kind of see a seam there between two pieces, so I imagine there's a fair amount of rust and everything sticking it together. So looking at this, I don't think I need to really take that out. If I could easily take it out, I would, but it's not going to be easy, so I won't. So here's the top of the governor. Again, this is where the governor finger rests, and it connects to this metering piston, I guess you'd call it. See, it has these square holes here, and this doesn't have a bottom. It goes right through. You'll also notice that this is prevented from rotating with this here. It can slide up and down, but this valve cannot rotate. That keeps these little windows, there's 4 of them, in line with those windows inside this gas valve, or governor valve. Now on the side here, this was the main gas inlet. That's where this safety shutoff was mounted. And you can see one of the square windows there, so gas can come in. It can also go around. You see there's a chamber in there. It can go all the way around, and then gas can come out all 4 of those holes. Air comes in from the bottom through those 4 larger slots. Here's a quick look at the bottom where the air comes in. It just seems like there's kind of a diffuser sort of thing, so air doesn't just shoot straight in. Kind of has to come in and then wrap around and then come through those 4 rectangular ports on the inside. And one last thing this features is a fine control, or a fine adjustment on the gas ratio. Again, this rod here is attached to that metering piston, and it slides up and down on this guide so it can't rotate, so those windows stay aligned with those windows. But there's this nut here And this arm, and underneath this mud dauber nest, there's an oval hole, so you could loosen this nut and rotate this arm one way or the other, which in turn, since this arm is connected to this one via this pin, it'll rotate this gas valve a little bit. So rather than that hole and that hole being perfectly aligned, they'll be slightly off-center or more on-center, so you can really fine-tune your gas adjustment. Also, I noticed that right off the bat, this gas window is not perfectly square to this arm here. They're a little bit off. It seems like this is just threaded onto here, or rather this is threaded onto the valve stem and locked with that lock nut. So you can do a real coarse adjustment just by loosening this lock nut and turning this arm one way or the other to get it more in line or out of line with that rectangular hole. Then once you get it close to where you want it, you do your fine adjustment there. And I imagine you could do that adjustment with it on the engine, with this all assembled, looking through that gas port, and you can see that rectangular hole, and you'll be able to see that through it. So that'll give you a visual indicator of whether things are aligned or not aligned. I'm sure these adjustments could take quite a bit of fiddling to get right in the original installation when it's actually under load, making power. For me, obviously, it's really not going to make a difference. I know of a identical engine to this where the owner totally bypassed the governor and just put a spacer in to hold this valve wide open all the time, and he meters the speed with the gas cock. And I may do that, but for the time being I'm just going to clean this up, because obviously this is very dirty and I don't want this stuff getting sucked into the engine, so I'm going to clean all this. I mean, man, that's a lot of goo in there just for air and propane. That's a lot of goo to have built up over the years. So anyway, I will clean this up, and I'll just mark all the adjustments and put everything back just the way it is. And if I like how it runs, good, and if not, I might just take this top off and bypass it somehow to hold this wide open, and I'll just let the governor spin just for show, because people like seeing the flyball governor spin around. Alright, so to clean up the bore inside here, it's a bore, so I might as well use a cylinder hole. So there you have it. That came out really nice. Now, as you can notice, this is an interesting thing. I enjoy looking at these sort of things as I'm taking stuff apart or whatever. Notice that this bore isn't part of the casting, but it's a sleeve that's been machined and pressed in. And I'd imagine the main reason they did that is because they need that gas channel all the way, going all the way around. And to make a casting like that probably is possible, but challenging, because you need a lot of core pieces in there to make that passageway, and then you'd need to break all those core pieces out, and there's probably a risk of some of the pieces staying in. It would just be more time, more labor. But this way they can cast a piece just with various internal features, machine a bore, a certain diameter, then machine this sleeve, and press the sleeve in, and it's a lot easier to manufacture that way. Well, that's really about it. As you see, I cleaned up the valve disc itself. Just nothing special, wire brushes and solvent and carburetor cleaner and stuff like that. The stem was a little rusty, so I just used some sandpaper. You can see, now that it's all clean, you can see this is in a bronze bushing, which is pretty cool. They really spared no expense with this engine. Even this valve, I mean, this valve is not going to move up and down all that much, especially an engine like this. It's going to be at one speed, one load, this governor is really not going to, I think, maybe someone can correct me, I don't think this governor would really even be doing that much work, but there's even a bronze bushing in there. And when I took all this apart, I had to remove a rocker arm. Each joint in all the rocker arm assemblies, each one of those has a bronze bushing in it. Very well made from what I've seen so far. Anyway, this is cleaned up. I just sanded it a little bit and cleaned up the bore. The one last thing that I'm going to do is try to clean that gas passageway in there. I tried feeding a rag through so I could just kind of pull back and forth with the rag. And I got the rag through, but there's a lot of rough casting protrusions in there that catches on the rag. So what I'm going to do, luckily it's springtime, I can turn my garden hose back on. And I'm just going to hose this with solvent and then blast it out with the garden hose. Because there's a lot of just loose just junk, you know, in kind of like this stuff, or like this is the kind of material that's stuck in there. So it doesn't really need any abrasion, it just needs lots of flow to flush it out. So I'm going to do that, and that's really it. I was going to continue the video until everything is perfectly shiny clean and put back together, but this is really it. All I have to do is clean out that passageway, wipe it out with some carburetor cleaner, make a gasket, put it back together, and you don't really need to see any of that. You've seen the meat of it. You've seen how it comes apart. You've seen what's inside it. You've seen the condition that it was in, and you know that when I put it back together it'll be all clean, just like this metering disc here. So I guess the last thing I'll do before I put it all back together is maybe clean this one up too, because the you know, this is where the gas goes, and there's plenty of rust chunks in there, so I'm going to clean that up. Anyway, that's it. One step in who knows how many steps it'll take to get this Bessemer Model FC running. So thanks for watching. Make sure to hit the subscribe button there to stay up to date with these videos as they come out, and hit the like button if you like this video. I'm sure you did. And thanks for watching, and as always, come on back for more.